Hi everyone, I'm Mindy Eggen and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you a little trick to blending with intricate stencils. The stencil that I'm going to be using today is the Waterfall scene from Altenew. When I saw this, I absolutely fell in love, and it creates the most scenic picture that you can put on the front of your card. Now, with Altenew's stencils and also their stamp sets, you're getting an inspiration guide, and it also shows you how to layer up your stencils. I'm going to start with a 9 by 12 sticky mat that I'm putting a piece of white cardstock on. So my cardstock is going to stick to that grid mat, and that grid mat is also going to help hold my stencils in place. All of the stencils do have a number up in the top right-hand corner, either a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. I think there's 5 layers to this stencil. So that's going to tell you the order in which you need to stencil them. And on this first layer of the stencil, we actually have two scenes. We have some shrubs that kind of go on top of the waterfall, and then there's also the waterfall. And a lot of times on the stencils, there is kind of an etched line on them to signify that there are two different scenes on the one stencil. So I started out by lining that stencil up just a little bit past the top of my cardstock, and that was just so I didn't have to worry about masking that top part off. So I'm going to be using the ink collection Tropical Forest, I think it was. I will have all of the names at the top of the screen in case I mispronounce it, but this is a beautiful shade of greens. This is the second layer that I lined up to go with the second color in the collection. So I always kind of work lightest to darkest. Now I'm coming in with the third layer. I'm going to add that. But before I remove this layer of the stencil, because this is the last layer for this image, I'm going to bring in the darkest shade out of this ink line, and I'm going to add that darkest color just kind of more towards the bottom. Another thing with the stencils, which is a little hard to see on camera, but there are also etched lines so that you can help line that etched line up with the image you already have down on your mat. It's really makes a lot more sense when you see it in person. For the second part of the image, there's a little bit more greenery that goes underneath it. So I am going to be switching up my green collection. This is going to be more of a bright type of forest green. And I'm going to start with that first layer. Now, this one actually has a couple other ones that go down sort of in the waterfall. There is also an etched line there to separate between the first layer and the second layer of this greenery. So I'm just going to shift my stencil. That's going to line up with that first layer I placed down. And then I'm coming in with the next color in this ink collection. This one that I happen to be using is from the Green Valley collection. So now I'll remove that layer of the stencil and bring in the next layer for this greenery. And this is going to be a darker shade. Now, as you go through, it might not look like much, or I don't want to say it looks chaotic, but you need to finish the image in order for it to all come together. That's a lot of time with anything, whether you're coloring or stamping. You need to complete the project in order to see the big picture. The next image I'm going to be placing down, which is where my tip is going to come in, this is the rocks behind the waterfall, and I'm using some grays for this. On this first layer, it has some very delicate areas on here. So sometimes I will hold those delicate areas with my finger or my tweezers while I ink blend. But here is the tip, is instead of going in circular motions, which is what I always recommend, I am going up and down with my brush. That is going to help those intricate areas not move maybe as much. And you'll avoid getting that halo effect or that stencil piece moving. So I'm moving on to the second layer of the stencil. I'm adding a little bit darker shade of gray. Now in the example in the book, they used browns. I will show you a couple other cards that I created where I did use the browns and also another shade of blue. So be sure to stick around for that. I'll show you those completed cards. Now, this is the third layer, which is adding more detail to the background there. This is just a very artistic looking type of image. I don't know if I want to say realistic, but you do need to just kind of step back away from it to see how absolutely gorgeous and serene this scene is. Now, this last layer of the stencil has the sky and also the water for our waterfall. Now, for this top portion here, I wiped away a little bit of that green that's at the top, and I'm coming in with Sea Breeze, which is very much a true blue to me. And then for the water, I'm coming in with Teal Cave. I was thinking of a very tropical and type island type of waterfall, so I wanted to have this teal colored looking water. Again, I'm going very gently over these areas. Sometimes I will go up and down just depending on how intricate those areas are. Then I can peel that away and we have this absolutely gorgeous scene. Now to take this off of my sticky mat, a lot of times I will bend my mat and then just peel that away. And then I can kind of slowly shape my cardstock back into its original form. I'm going to use a sentiment from the Sulfur Cosmos stamp set. I love this set and I love these greetings and the font. I do use this in my other cards as well. So I am starting out with big hugs and I'm using my stamp wheel to stamp this down. I am using the Ulta Obsidian ink. I should have probably cleaned my stamp before I stamped it down. There was a little bit of something on there. So I'm going to just clean that with a tidy towel, wipe my hand over it to dry it, and then ink it up one more time so that it is nice, solid black lines. Because the Obsidian ink is a pigment ink, it stays wet a little longer, and I want to get this die cut out right away. So I just take my heat tool to help dry that, and then I'm going to hold the coordinating die in place with some satin masking tape and run that through my die cut machine. When I was creating my scene, I did not center it on my card very well, and I knew I was going to trim this panel down. So my tip to trimming this down is I am lining up the edge of the design with the edge of my clear guard. I will do that each time on each side, and that's going to give me a perfect margin of white space around the entire image. It almost looks like a photograph. Then I'm going to take some foam tape and I'm going to layer this on the back of my scene so I can pop this up on a white card front. I'll remove the backing of the foam tape and I'm going to center this on that white card front that I have cut to 4¼ by 5½, just taking my time and making sure that those margins are even all the way around the edge. When I die cut out the sentiment, I die cut out another piece out of just white cardstock, and I'm layering those two together with some liquid glue. That's just going to help build stability for my sentiment. And then I'm adding a little bit of foam tape to the back of that, and I'm gonna place this down in that bottom left-hand corner. This sentiment actually does fit perfectly within my scene, but I didn't want it to cover up that much of the scene. So I like it kind of hanging off the edge there a little bit. So that is my completed card. Now the other ones that I have here, this one is using the recommended colors that come in that inspirational booklet. So it's got brown for the rocks and then more of a kind of cloudy blue. And then this is another one where I used more of a light teal instead of the dark teal. And I did use that Sulfur Cosmos stamp set for all of the sentiments. I love each and every one of these scenes. I think this is such a fantastic stencil. I will have all the supplies that I used in today's video linked down below in my video description and over on my blog. And I hope that little ink blending tip on doing intricate stencils helps you when you are creating. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again in the next video.